Alrighty, what is going on, guys? Hope all is well. So, back with the second part of this series of painting Flash, and we're going to be doing the spit shading for these Flash sheets. So I'm going to be starting with black ink using P.H. Martin's Bombay Black India ink, same ink that I used for the lining. And we're just gonna go right in and get right to it. So, like with the lining, I'm going left to right, but this time instead of going top to bottom, I'm gonna just kind of be going with how I feel. So like for this piece, I'm gonna be starting at the bottom and just kind of starting with the smaller areas, kind of getting back in the rhythm of laying down this ink with a brush. So I'm gonna start here with the nose of the wolf. So. And then I'm gonna move down to this hoof. So, for those of you who might not be familiar with spit shading, in this style of fading, what I'm doing here is I lay down some ink. So like right here, I'm gonna work in this part of the mouth, the tongue, put a little shading there, lay down some ink, and then I literally put my spit on this other brush and I go over it like that, get the ink wet, and then go back in, re-wet the brush with my spit, go back in and fade out that little fade. So again, I'm gonna be working in, let's see, this little corner right here. And fade, re-wet, and then fade the faded part. And then you can kind of go back in and blend some more if you need. Okay? So now I've got this right here. So it can get a little bit tricky, knowing like where to put the fade. And that's why it's good to paint Flash, because it allows you to sort of practice shading tattoos, you know, before actually doing a tattoo. Because the last thing you want is to have a really good stencil and then you ruin it by shading it and coloring it incorrectly. It's not a good feeling. So preparation and practice is so helpful. See, like that eye, I just messed that up. Kind of looks weird, but oh well. That's why I do this, to practice. Because even though it doesn't look the way I want to on the paper, now I know what I don't want to do when I come to the tattoo. So the key is really to just kind of work slow and be intentional. I also recommend, if you kind of like have some perfectionism issues like I do. Like for me, if it's not looking how I want it to, I kind of start to freak out. So if you're like that, I recommend going to like shops where they have hand painted flash and looking at their flash, and you will see mistakes. And it's kind of helpful because it is a nice reminder that like you're no different than anybody else. Like, mistakes are just kind of part of the game. So it's starting to come along. You just gotta be patient, really. That's all I can really tell you. That's my dog walking around. If you hear that sound. It's raining over here, so he's a little bit agitated. He's not a fan of the rain. So I'm kind of just winging it over here. I don't really recommend that. I had a plan, but kind of feeling like maybe it's not working out. One thing for me, and this is why it's so important for me to practice all the time, I've noticed that a lot of times things just don't go according to plan for me. Like I'll have it all mapped out on my iPad, and then when it comes down to it, it looks nothing like that. So that's just something to consider. There's always going to be something that you didn't expect to go that way. Sort of like this fur. I mean, I really did not expect it to look like this. I'm kind of wondering what I need to do to fix it. I mean, it's not that bad. Sometimes it's good to just like let it be. I've noticed that a lot of times I'll come back and look at it at a later time and I'll be fine with the way it looks. It's just the fresh eyes make a difference. So sorry about that. Needed to grab some water. One thing I will say when it comes to spit shading, it's not a bad idea to chew a piece of gum, have a glass of water nearby. For those of you who smoke cigarettes, I don't anymore, but I guarantee you, you will be able to smell that fucking brush while you're working. And that's pretty gross. So keep some gum handy or something for, you know, for that. Unless you like that. Which is weird to me, but hey, everybody's got their thing. So I'm actually really liking this. I'm actually super cool with this. Some of these bigger fades sometimes can be a little bit more difficult. I recommend getting a bigger brush for some of these, but I'm kind of too lazy to do that. So I'll just kind of take it as it is. It's kind of okay with me. Because like I said in the last videos, for me, I'm not trying to show my flash like it's some kind of masterpiece. I'm showing my flash to let my clients have an idea of what they can get fully rendered. And I expect the tattoo to basically remedy any mistakes that I've made in the flash. So the flash gives them an idea of what it will look like, and then the tattoo is gonna be like the flash, but even better. Ideally. Like I said, sometimes things just don't go according to plan. I've had plenty of times where I've got the flash sitting right next to me while I'm doing the tattoo, and for some reason at the end of it, I just feel like the flash looks better than the tattoo. And sometimes that's because even though it looks good on paper, it doesn't mean that it translates that well to a tattoo. That's another thing to always consider, is you have to be thinking as you're doing as you're painting your flash, you kind of have to be thinking like you're tattooing it. I mean, that's the point. but sometimes it's a little easy to get carried away in painting and just kind of start doing your thing. You know, you love the idea, love the design. That doesn't always mean it's gonna show up as well as a tattoo. So that's just something to always kind of be mindful of. As you know, go about your approach. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier in the other videos about, you know, like detail, stuff like that. Some details that show up great on paper just get lost in a tattoo. It just doesn't work. Okay. One of my favorite things about shading is just how quick it can go. So, like, for this part, it's gonna be a pretty long, pretty large fade. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is fill in all the black. And you can do this opposite, you can do the fade first. I'm just doing this because I already have this brush right here, which is fine for filling in, but it doesn't hold much ink. So if I wanted to use it for the fade, I would have to go back over it, and it's just gonna end up not being a very clean look. So I'm gonna fill it in, and then I'm gonna get a bigger brush, go over it on the outside, and use that to complete the fade. So I'll show you what I'm talking about here in just a second. But watch this. See how it dries out? This area right here is gonna dry out fast, and I'm gonna struggle being able to get a fade with that. So you'll be able to see the contrast when I get a bigger brush out. Make sure that's nice and saturated. Okay. So we're gonna let that dry for just a quick second. Doesn't take very long. I'm gonna grab this bigger brush here. So I'm really liking this already. And I think that looks pretty cool. This isn't gonna be like, this may or may not be part of my permanent collection on the wall, but my intent for this is just Halloween flash. So I'm not really that attached to the outcome. I just want it to look good enough for the wall, really. And I think it will. So far it looks great to me. Okay, I'm gonna put a little bit more ink in this bottle. Or put a little bit more ink in my little cup thing. I don't know what you call that. Because I know, like in painting, it's a palette or a what is that called? Tabaret, I believe. It's that little like table thing that you can put your paints on and stuff. Okay, so hopefully you can see just how much more wet this is. So now, bam. And don't take my word for it, but I believe that India ink is non-toxic for consumption. I mean, in small doses, of course. And that's why it's okay to spit shade with it. Can also do this with gouache. I wouldn't recommend doing the black with watercolor, just because it can I don't know what the word is. And that can happen with gouache too, so I really just recommend using India ink for your spit shading. And then whenever you do your color, you can kind of go back over it. apologies if you can hear me breathing. I tend to get a little hyper focused, and in that, my breathing gets a little heavy. Okay, so I made a mistake right there. It's fine. You live, you live. The opportunity to make mistakes is a blessing, because that means that you have the opportunity to make something. If you weren't making mistakes, it's probably because you're not making anything. There's a mistake right there. Bam. Look at that. I think the best part of being an artist is the problem solving, and not the problem solving in creating something. It's the problem solving in fixing all the stuff you mess up when you're creating something. All right, so there's that. Let's move on to this little lady. This one's gonna be quick because I'm really just doing some of the hair, these shoes right here, maybe a little bit around the neck. Everything else is gonna be color and skin tone. One thing you wanna always think about is skin tone is a color. So where does it lie in your values, your value scale? And also, how can it be used as a color that accents everything else, you know? Because you want to try to avoid a full fill-in. It just doesn't look right as a tattoo. In drawing and painting on canvas and paper, that might be referred to as negative space. Just something to think about when you're tattooing or painting flash. And then we're gonna go up here, off the top of the head. Didn't mean to make that line so thick. Okay, now I might do just a little something in the halo just to differentiate the back from the front of the halo. So she's done. That was quick. Now we're gonna move on to this guy. This one won't take as long either. As long as the wolf, at least. So, I can start here. if you're new to spit shading and painting flash, I would not try this out immediately on stuff that you like. I would get a cheap pad of watercolor paper, or if you're gonna cut your own paper, your own arches at the art store, make sure you save some scraps and practice on the scraps. The worst feeling is when you've got a great design and you jump into it without properly testing your materials, and then you screw it up. Trust me, it's not a good time. So I fucked up over here. Just hoping that I can sort of fade that out enough to not be noticeable. So I'm actually gonna put another line in this hair right here. I think that'll look better, yeah. There we go. Okay, excuse me for a second. I'm gonna go let my dog outside. Okay. My apologies for that. So, get back on track. missed a couple lines. No worries. One thing that will be really helpful for you is to be able to maintain your composure when things aren't going the way you thought it would. So it's gonna happen. You're gonna go, oh fuck. Why did I just do that? But if you can pull it off in a way that your client looks at it and has no idea, then mission success. If you pull it off in a way that your client does notice it, try and take that as an opportunity to learn and just do it differently. Now you know what you need to work on. Just know that no matter what, it's gonna be all right. Because, like, I've had a few instances where I'm like, should I really even be tattooing? Like, I'm just, really beating myself up over it. Just, like, how the hell did I end up making such a bad mistake? And why was I allowed to take this project on, whatever, just going through the self-deprecating mind loop. But it is all gonna be okay. Kind of have to go through that. So my one thing, in case you guys haven't noticed, if your brush is too wet or the ink is too wet when you go to fade it, it will have this weird effect that makes it a little bit unpredictable, a little bit difficult to control. So just be mindful of the, I don't know if viscosity is the word. Just be mindful of how wet your ink is and how wet your fading brush is, because it does make it difficult. And that's part of the practice, is knowing your materials, knowing where, your consistencies are at and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, there's always that little bit of unpredictability, which I like it a little bit. I think it's a little bit exciting. Kind of keeps you on your toes, but it's also really frustrating. So just something to keep in mind. Okay. I think I'm gonna put a little black down here. Fade that up. And maybe go back in right here. Okay, so that is the first flash sheet of this 2-sheet set for Halloween. And I'll be back with the next video for the second sheet.